Okay, so hello everybody. It looks like we've made it to the last video here. This is where we're going to allow the user to type in a name and a comment and actually insert into the database their comment and then subsequently display it right up here. So thanks for everyone who's stuck with me here to the end of this. And yeah, let's get right into the code again. So as usual, I'm going to make sure that I've got my XAMPP started up here with the Apache and MySQL, which is good. And this is where we left off with the code last time. So now essentially we're going to use this functions.js file again and just add on to it our next function. And we're going to have to alter this function slightly and do some stuff, but we'll get to it when we get to it. And again, we're going to have to jump into the server as well to finish up, all the inserts and stuff here as well. So we'll start on the index.html page though, and essentially we're going to give the button an on-click event, and the button is right here. And this, of course, corresponds to this button right here. So we're going to give this button the on-click event. So to do that, we just add on here on click. That's a JavaScript event, and we can call this we'll call this one insert comment, because that's exactly what it'll be doing. So this function will be called insert comments. And yeah, over on the functions.js page, let me just save this first. We'll create another function down here, function, and it will be called insert comment, exactly what we just made it on that page. Great. So we're going to do another AJAX call essentially to make this work. To make it work without having to reload the page. So that's the benefit of AJAX. And so we'll just begin just like we did before by making an HTTP object. All right, it's equal to new XML HTTP request, just like that. And again, we'll make an onReady state change. Great. Okay. And inside here, this is where we'll code the response again. So that's going to be sort of a to-do. We have to code the response and basically reload. We don't want to, so reload maybe is not the right word, but display the new comment into the comment section. And when I say comment section, I'm referring to this portion right here. So that's what we're going to have to do on the response. But before we can get a response, we actually have to send something. So in this case, in the last scenario here, we used a get. In this case, we're going to use a post, because we're going to be posting something to this server and ultimately putting that into the database. So we're going to have to start by grabbing the values out of these text boxes here. And we're going to grab those by using the DOM. And we're going to store that into a variable named name. So we're going to go document.get element by ID, and the element that we want to get by ID in this case is the name, and we gave that ID, we called it name. So we'll grab the name and we'll grab the value out of it. Oops, sorry, it's not a method, I think it's an attribute, so it's just value. And then we're going to get the message as well. And that's going to be document.get element by ID message.value. Okay, so again, message, I believe we can double check. We called it, yes, we gave that the ID message. So basically what we're doing here is getting whatever the person has typed into the text boxes here. And that's what we're going to grab the value there and put it up into here. But first we have to pass that to the server in order to even do that. So to do that, we will open up a post request. So post. And then we will have to call another URL, I guess, in the server. We'll call it just insert because we are inserting, and true. We'll make it asynchronous. Okay. And then we have to specify what we're sending in the request header. So set request header. And in this case, again, we start with the content type. And we're going to be sending JSON again. So application JSON. And now we're going to make the string. So this is what we're going to send in this send method. And we're going to manually code up a JSON string. Now, this is, again, one of those situations where I feel like there may be better ways of doing this. And if there is, please let me know. This is what I've done. This is how I've kind of got it to work. But if there's ways that I can do this better, I would love to learn. So, but we're going to make a JSON string here, basically, with, we'll call it name. And then what we have to do is concatenate onto that variable that we just grabbed, which is this variable. We're going to have to concatenate that onto here as the value of name. So we have to be careful with our quotes because we have to exit, sort of exit these double quotes. And inside single quotes, we have to concatenate our variable name. Okay. And then we have to put a comma because we also have to put the message on as well. So we'll call it message and colon. And then we will have to get out of the double quotes and concatenate inside of that the message again. Okay. And just like that, we've constructed a JSON string. So this will be sent to the server. And we'll catch this on the server side, and then from the server, input it into the database. So what we'll do now then, this is pretty much complete, is we'll jump over to the server side now. Okay, but just before we jump over to the server, I'm just realizing I got some typos here. And I also forgot to put the if ready state change equal to 4, this statement here, so we'll just grab this down here. Although this would work even without that, it's probably best practice to include this here, so let's add that in. Okay, there we go. That's a little cleaner. So now we can jump over to the server side and essentially code this path, and also code how we're going to connect, insert into the database. So once we go over here, we could just add another else if right in here. Oops, gotta spell it right though. And we'll just say if the request method is equal to, in this case, post, and the request.url is equal to, in our case, /insert, then we want to do some stuff. So what do we want to do? Well, first let's send a response status code equal to 100 to say that yes, that was okay, and then we'll send a set header, and in this case we're not really going to send anything back necessarily. Maybe some plain text we could send back, so just go text /plain. I believe that's how that's done. And essentially what we're going to want to do now is initialize an empty variable to receive that JSON string that we're sending over. And I'll kind of go through it once we've coded it. I'll kind of talk about what's going on again here. So if it's not really making sense right now, that's okay. We'll get around to it. But what we want to do is get the data from the request, the post request that we're sending. And we can do that by using this request.on method and grabbing the data. So that is, I feel like there's, yeah, there's one too many. Why do I have too many? There, yeah, that's right. Too many brackets. And then what we can do is concatenate onto this initialized empty string variable the data. Now, to test to see if this is actually working, we can console.log the content and see exactly what is in there. And just to make sure that, you know, this this is working and what's happening here. So just to go over what's happening, we will call, when we click this button, the insert comment method, which is on the functions .js file. And we we basically start an AJAX object here. And we're going to grab the values that the user has inputted into these two text boxes. And we're going to put them into a JSON string and send that string in a post request to our server. So when we jump over to the server now, when the server receives the post request, it's going to send, okay, yes, we got the request. And then it's going to grab that data that was in the JSON string, put it into this content variable, and for now, we're going to print it out into this console down here. So we're just to test that, let's start our server again. And it looks like we got a little bit of a error here. We're missing this curly bracket, and I can see the red squiggle here already. Let's see what exactly is going on. Oh yeah, okay, so here we are missing this, I believe. There we go. Because this bracket here was never closed, but now it is. So we'll just start this up, and oh, we got another error. Oh, I didn't save it, so that's the problem. And now we're all good. So we're going to go over here. Let's open up this, and we'll go to the network. Now it's gonna, yeah, okay. We'll see what the issue is. So user 4, and then we'll just say this is a comment for user 4, and we're going to hit comment. And we can see here on the network that we called the insert, and it's pending because we haven't actually done anything in the request. That's why we're seeing it's pending, but that's okay because we don't need to look at that right now. What we want to look at is, see, here is the request payload, right? So we just typed in user 4, and this comment is user 4. This is the request payload on the post request. And here's the JSON string. And we're going to send it to the insert URL, which on the server side, we've coded here, insert. And we're going to grab that string and that content from the browser, put it into this variable, and then print it out into this console down here. And we can see that, yes, indeed, it did print out down here. So now, in order to access these bits of data, we can just do what we did before by turning it into an object and being able to access those data. So in order to turn it into an object, we just have to parse the string. So we can go var object is equal to json.parse, and we're going to parse the content string into the object. And now what we can do is we can console.log the username is, and concatenate onto that object dot, and whatever we called it in this string, name. So we'll go object.name, and we can say console.log we can say comment is, and we can go object dot, and we called it message. So now if we save that, start the server, we can, let's go with user 5, and we'll hit comment. So again, if we look at the network insert, we can see that, oh, did it not refresh this? What happened here? Why am I not seeing what I want to see here? Oh, did we? Oh no, it did work here. Okay, let's just refresh this page. Maybe I had to refresh that. Okay. Let's open this up again, and let's try that one more time. So user 5, this comment is user 5, and we'll just hit comment. Yep, so we'll see the insert here. Again, this is the string that we made on the front end, and this was made in the functions.js page with this string here, and we're going to send it in a post request to our server. And then in our server, we grabbed both the object's name and message and printed that out here. So this is user name is user5, and the comment is from user5, which is exactly what we typed here. So now what we have to do is take these, and instead of just printing them to the console, we need to insert them into the database. So essentially, we're going to do something very similar to what we did here. So I'm just going to copy and paste this code, because this is our connection to the database. And I'm going to paste it underneath here. So we get the connection, and instead of doing a select, we're going to do an insert into, and we're going to insert into the table called comments dot comments, I believe. What did we call the database here? Comments.comments, yes, that's right. And then we also could have just put comments, because the database is already selected for us here, comments. I'll leave it for that, just for clarity. And we're going to insert into the columns comments.username and comments. I think it's message. Is that what we called it? Let's double check that, because I don't think that's right. It's, yeah, username and comment with lowercase. So there we go. Now, again, so you might be wondering, well, Simon, there's a few more things here that you got to do. What about the ID? What about the date? That's a good question. But so the ID is auto incrementing, right? We set that to auto increment, so we don't have to code in ID. And for the date, we could use JavaScript, get the current date, and then put it in. But what we also can do is we can just edit or change the structure of the database here, of this table, if we hit change. And we can turn this, instead of a date, we can turn it into a timestamp. Okay, so if we turn it into a timestamp here, we can get the current timestamp. And if we save that, okay, so that worked. So what we can do is if we insert, let's just insert one user manually here. So let's put something that makes it so user 4 would be next. So let's put in user 4. And this is a comment from user 4. I'm not going to put in a date, and I'm not going to put an ID, but it still inserts into the table without a problem. So the reason it's 13 and not 4 is because I've been testing with this database, so it's just auto-incrementing to the next one. Because I've deleted some, that's why it's still 13. But if you guys have just been following along, you might see a 4 here. Maybe you guys have deleted some, and if you delete comments, it doesn't delete the ID, it just keeps setting the next ID. So that's normal. And then you can see the timestamp is also here as well. And we can see this reflected if we refresh this page. We see that that is reflected here also. So in this way, we don't have to worry about getting the current time with JavaScript, and then also having to programmatically auto increment an ID. It's kind of handy to kind of know these things with SQL. So the next part is we're going to have to insert into these columns, and we want to tell them what values we want to insert into those. So I'm going to use the question marks sort of syntax here, and this is to protect against what's known as a SQL injection attack. So what a SQL injection attack is, if you're not familiar, users can start typing in actual SQL code into your input boxes here, and that code will be ran in your database, and people can do drop tables, delete content, select content, and basically it's a way people can hack into your database, and you just don't want that. So I'm pretty familiar with doing things like binding parameters, which basically takes the variable and says, well, this has to be a string, so then the database will just sort of read it as a string and not as a SQL code to execute. At least that's sort of my understanding. I looked at, so since in this, with NodeJS, we're using the MySQL package. So I looked up the documentation in just the Node Package Manager website here, and I was looking at escaping query identifiers. So it looks like here, if you can't trust an SQL identifier because it is provided by a user, you should escape it with MySQL. And essentially, this is how you can prevent SQL injection attacks. And the way I found this in the code is I just kind of searched for SQL injection, and you can see here that, okay, you know, it comes up here near the bottom. I think it comes up a few times here. You can kind of search for it. Yeah, escaping query values, right? So in order to avoid SQL attacks, you should always escape user-provided data before using it inside a SQL query. So I'm going to use the alternative. You can use the question mark syntax because that's sort of what I'm familiar with. And so that's how we're going to go with that. You could use these other ones if you're more comfortable with that. So essentially all we have to do here is add an array that's going to fill in these question marks. So just add an array, and in the first one we're going to put the username, and in the second one we're going to put the actual comment, which correspond to these here actually. So we can just copy and paste this, put that into the first index of this array, or the 0 index, and then we can put this one into the first index right there, and then those will be correlating to these values here in this order. Yeah, so now we've inserted it into the database with this command. We no longer need to get a result because we're just inserting into the database, and we don't have to send out this response. But what we can do is to let ourselves know that this actually worked, is we can log ourselves here console.log, and we can say success. And what else we can add down here is that, after we close the connection, we can we can actually send a response here, response.end, and we'll also send a success message to our front end functions.js. So just kind of go through what's going to happen here. We're going to get the connection. We're going to insert the values into the database. If that worked, we're going to console.log success into this console down here. Then we're going to close the connection and respond with the string success. So that's sort of coming in handy here that we just use text plain, because we're just going to send some plain text back. And we're going to receive that here. And the reason that it was just saying pending in the network is because we didn't code anything here. So now we can code something here. So we can get the result, which is going to be the string that says success, which is going to be this dot response text. Okay. And we can console.log the result so that we can see that did that work or not. And we'll save that. And this console.log will be on the front end of our website, which is going to be in the browser. And which is, if you hit F12, you can see it will be in this console here. So what we have to do is we have to start our server up. So that's running, and we'll refresh this page. And then we can insert a comment here. So we'll say user 5. Whoops. And this is a comment from user 5. So once we hit comment, yeah, we see our success message here. Okay, and then if we go back here, we see we also got our success message here. So for our understanding, what this means is this query should have worked. But let's double check that because, well, did it work? So let's refresh here, and we're going to watch to see a change here, right? User 5 should be added once we hit refresh. And look at that, it worked. So that's excellent. So it did work, and we've successfully inserted it into the database. So we can now, what we want to do is we've successfully put it into the database, but it hasn't actually come up here, right? If we hit refresh, or actually, sorry, here, I just closed the server. So we'll just turn the server back on. If I hit refresh, then we'll see user 5. But we won't see user 5 until I hit refresh. And that's not really convenient for the user. The user probably wants to see their comment immediately come up. So back over on the functions page, all we're going to have to do to achieve that is basically recall this function, because this function calls everything from the database. But if we don't make a little adjustment here first, we're going to run into a little problem. But it's a very simple thing, but I'll just show you what I mean first. So we'll just call it, and we'll save this, and we will start the server up here. Oh, oops, I just stopped it. Okay, start the server up here, and we'll jump back over here, and we'll refresh this page. And let's type in user6 and user6, and we'll see something interesting happens here. If we scroll down, we can see what happened here is it actually reloaded so this was initially it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then it reloaded everything 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we don't want it to have to reload the whole entire, like, append on the whole thing again, plus the new one. We just want just the new one. So it's what we can do to solve this issue is if we scroll up right before we call all this select stuff, we can basically document.getElementById. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab this element, this div tags element, which is called comments. And of course, this is where this is this div tag where all the comments are going into. So we're going to select that one, comments, getElementById, and I have to put that in quotes. And we're just going to set that to an empty string. So .inner HTML equals an empty string. So now what's going to happen, rather than just just appending all of the new stuff, the new comment and the old stuff to the bottom, we're going to empty the whole div and just it'll appear like we're just reloading the very bottom one, the newest comment. So if we save that and let's start the server up again, it also won't affect. So if we hit refresh here, oh, oops, looks like something, okay, it's not loading there. So let's take a look at the code. Oh yes, you probably noticed this. I spelled document wrong. So let's fix that typo. Document. There we go. We'll save that. We'll start the server. And let's hope that fixed it. And okay, perfect. So now if we try to insert, let's say user7, and this is a comment from user7, and we hit comment, we'll see, bam, just user7 comes up. And so now that's basically it. Now we've sort of got this working. We got our success messages here. And if we check in the database for user7, we see user7 has showed up here. So let's just do one more test just to make sure things are actually working still here. And good. So there we go. So we're now adding the comments in without reloading the page. As you can see, it just sort of adds the comment in. And if we do come to the page for the first time and refresh, we can also see that all the comments are still here loaded from the database, which is excellent. So I'd just like to thank everyone who's watched the whole video series. I hope it's been helpful. I am always, looking to learn new things. So if there's better ways that I could have done some of my coding, or if you guys have some tips or suggestions, please leave them in the comments. Or suggestions about future tutorials or other videos that you'd like to see. I'm definitely open to hearing ideas. So thanks so much and happy coding.